The boardroom was silent except for the rhythmic tapping of Jameson's pen against the polished mahogany table. Across from him, 3 men in tailored suits sat with identical smug expressions, their expensive watches glinting under the harsh fluorescent lights. The air conditioning hummed steadily, doing little to dispel the tension that had been building for weeks. "You're making a mistake," Jameson said, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. Beside him, Lila clenched her fists so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her heart pounded against her ribcage like a trapped bird desperate to escape. They had poured everything into this company, every waking hour, every ounce of creativity, every last penny from their savings. And now these corporate vultures wanted to take it all away. "We've made our decision," Mr. Thompson, the lead investor, announced, his tone dripping with condescension. "Effective immediately, both you and Ms. Harper are relieved of your positions. Your services are no longer required." He slid 2 termination letters across the table, the official documents looking like death warrants in their pristine white envelopes. Lila's breath caught in her throat as she stared at the letter bearing her name. She could feel the blood draining from her face, leaving her cold and numb. This couldn't be happening. Not after everything they'd built from scratch. Not after sleepless nights spent coding, designing, and perfecting their revolutionary software platform that had promised to change the tech industry forever. Jameson reached out to stop her trembling hand as she moved to grab the letter. "Don't touch it," he whispered urgently. "We need to think this through carefully." But Lila couldn't think straight. Her mind raced back to the countless meetings where she had presented their vision to skeptical investors, the endless pitches that had finally paid off when this same group of men had practically begged to fund their startup. They had believed in her, or so she had thought. Now she realized they hadn't cared about her ideas or Jameson's technical genius. They only saw dollar signs and power. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had been fired from her own company by people who didn't even understand what it did. Most of them probably couldn't explain their product if their lives depended on it. Yet here they were, dismantling something they had never truly appreciated, piece by piece. As they left the building that evening, Lila felt like she was walking through a dream. The familiar corridors of their office space seemed foreign now, the friendly faces of their employees replaced by strangers hired by the new management team. Some of their oldest team members tried to catch her eye, but she kept her gaze fixed ahead, unable to face the sympathy in their eyes. They had planned to celebrate tonight. Their latest update had just gone live, fixing critical bugs and introducing features that customers had been requesting for months. Instead of popping champagne bottles, they were sitting in Jameson's car in the parking lot, staring at the termination letters they still hadn't opened. "You know what's funny?" Lila said suddenly, her voice breaking the heavy silence. "They didn't even read the contract. I saw them skimming through it during the meeting. They have no idea what they've just done." Jameson turned to look at her, his dark eyes searching hers in the dim light. "You're right. They don't know about Clause 23. A small bitter laugh escaped Lila's lips. Clause 23, the safety net she had insisted on including in their original funding agreement, against the advice of their eager-to-please lawyer. At the time, she had been called paranoid, overly cautious. But now, that single paragraph might be their only hope. "They'll realize their mistake soon enough," Jameson said grimly. "And when they do, they'll come crawling back." "But will it be too late by then?" Lila asked, more to herself than to him. She leaned her head against the cool window glass, watching as the security guard made his rounds through the empty parking lot. The neon sign above the building entrance flickered intermittently, casting strange shadows across the asphalt. Her phone buzzed incessantly in her pocket, messages from concerned employees, missed calls from worried friends, notifications from social media blowing up with news of their sudden ousting. The tech community had always been a small, tight-knit world, and word traveled fast. Already, hashtags supporting their cause were trending on Twitter. "Lila," Jameson said softly, reaching out to touch her shoulder. "We can fight this. We have the law on our side, and more importantly, we have the truth. These people have no idea how our system works. They'll destroy everything we've built in a matter of weeks." She closed her eyes, letting his words sink in. The weight of their situation pressed down on her chest, threatening to crush her completely. But beneath the fear and anger, something else stirred, a spark of determination she hadn't felt in years. They had started this company with nothing but an idea and unwavering belief in its potential. They could do it again. "I need to see Sophie," she said suddenly, sitting up straight. Sophie Chen, their lead architect and one of the first employees they had hired, knew the system better than anyone besides Jameson himself. If there was anyone who could help them navigate this mess, it was her. Jameson nodded in agreement. Let's go. We need all the allies we can get right now. The drive to Sophie's apartment took longer than usual, the Friday night traffic heavier than they had anticipated. Lila watched the city lights blur past her window, each passing street lamp casting fleeting shadows across her face. Her mind raced with possibilities, scenarios playing out like chess moves in her head. Every option seemed fraught with risk, every path paved with uncertainty. When they arrived at Sophie's building, they found her waiting for them in the lobby, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. Her usually neat ponytail had come undone, strands of dark hair falling across her face. The moment she saw them, she rushed forward, her eyes wide with concern. I heard what happened, Sophie said without preamble. Are you okay? What are you going to do? We're taking back what's ours, Lila replied firmly, surprising even herself with the conviction in her voice. Sophie studied her face for a moment before nodding slowly. Good, she said simply. Because whatever you need, I'm in. Back in Sophie's apartment, they spread out documents across her dining table, contracts, organizational charts, flow diagrams of their system architecture. The coffee machine worked overtime as they pored over every detail, mapping out their strategy. Hours passed unnoticed as the city outside grew quiet, the distant hum of traffic fading into silence. The first thing we need to do is secure our intellectual property, Jameson said, pointing to a section of their original patent filing. Even though they control the company now, they don't own the core technology. That's still ours. Sophie nodded, already typing furiously on her laptop. I'll start documenting everything: source code repositories, design specifications, user data structures. We need to make sure nothing gets lost or compromised. And we need to reach out to our key clients, Lila added, making notes on her tablet. They trust us, not those corporate suits. If we play this right, we can create enough pressure to force the board's hand. As dawn broke over the city skyline, painting the room in soft golden light, Lila felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. The road ahead would be difficult, possibly impossible. But for the first time since walking out of that boardroom, she felt in control again. They weren't just fighting for their company, they were fighting for their vision, their values, their future. Their phones buzzed simultaneously with breaking news alerts. The tech press had gotten wind of their termination, and speculation was running rampant about the future of their platform. Analysts were already predicting chaos within the company, citing the founder's abrupt departure as a sign of impending failure. Looks like we're officially trending, Sophie said dryly, showing them the articles flooding social media platforms. Some were sympathetic, others gleeful at the drama unfolding in Silicon Valley's latest startup saga. But amidst the noise, something remarkable was happening. Their user community was rallying behind them. Supportive messages poured in from customers who had benefited from their platform, testimonials from businesses that had grown thanks to their technology. Influential tech bloggers were writing pieces defending their work, while industry experts questioned the wisdom of removing founding teams from operational roles. This changes things, Jameson said, scrolling through the reactions. Public opinion matters, especially when dealing with venture capitalists who care more about optics than actual results. Lila felt a surge of gratitude toward their users, the real people who had believed in their product long before any investors came knocking. These were the voices that mattered most, the ones that had validated their hard work and innovation time and again. Now they were becoming their strongest allies in this unexpected battle. We need to organize this support, she said, pulling up their emergency communication plan. Coordinate responses, gather testimonies, maybe even set up a dedicated website or forum for users to share their experiences. We have to show the board exactly what they're risking by pushing us out. Sophie had already started working on a basic framework for such a platform, her fingers flying across the keyboard. I can spin up a simple site by tonight, she offered. Something clean and professional where users can submit stories and access resources. As they worked through the morning, the scope of their challenge became increasingly clear. It wasn't just about reclaiming their positions or protecting their technology, it was about proving that their vision for the company was worth fighting for. The new management had already started implementing changes, restructuring teams and altering development priorities without fully understanding the implications. Reports were coming in from former colleagues about hasty decisions being made, valuable projects being shelved, and talented employees being driven away by the sudden shift in company culture. Each update fueled their determination, reinforcing their belief that they couldn't let this happen. By mid-afternoon, they had drafted a preliminary action plan, identified key supporters within the industry, and established communication channels with their user base. But as Lila reviewed their progress, she realized they were missing something crucial: legal counsel they could truly trust. "Our current lawyers are too close to the investors," she said, frowning at her notes. "We need someone who understands startups, who knows how to navigate these situations without being intimidated by big money." Jameson tapped his fingers thoughtfully against the table. "What about Margaret? From the incubator program?" Lila's eyes lit up at the suggestion. Margaret Chun, no relation to Sophie, had been one of their earliest mentors, a seasoned attorney who specialized in tech startups. More importantly, she had always believed in their vision, offering guidance and support long after their graduation from the incubator. "She's perfect," Lila agreed. "If anyone can help us navigate this mess, it's her." Before they could reach out to Margaret, however, another complication arose. An email alert popped up on Sophie's screen, a cease and desist order from the company's legal department. Apparently, the board had discovered their attempts to rally support and viewed it as a threat to their authority. "They're trying to shut us down before we even begin," Jameson muttered, reading through the document. "Claiming we're violating non-compete clauses and confidentiality agreements." Lila felt a surge of anger mixed with fear. The accusations were baseless. They had been careful to stay within legal boundaries, focusing on their existing relationships rather than soliciting new business. But the threat of legal action was real, and potentially devastating. "This is exactly why we need Margaret," Sophie said firmly. "She can help us respond appropriately while protecting ourselves from further retaliation." As they waited for Margaret's call, Lila found herself reflecting on how quickly everything had changed. Just days ago, she had been preparing for a major product launch, coordinating with marketing teams and planning celebratory events. Now she was essentially operating from the shadows, plotting to reclaim what had been taken from her. The injustice of it burned in her chest, fueling her resolve. They had built this company from nothing, sacrificed everything to make it successful, and now they were being treated like disposable assets. The very system that was supposed to reward innovation and hard work was betraying them instead. Margaret's voice on the speakerphone brought her back to the present. "All right, let's get to work," their former mentor said briskly. "First things first, we need to address that cease and desist. Then we can focus on activating Clause 23. Lila exchanged a glance with Jameson and Sophie. The moment they had been waiting for had finally arrived. Their secret weapon, buried deep within the fine print of their original funding agreement, was about to become their lifeline. As Margaret began outlining their legal strategy, Lila felt a mix of emotions: excitement, anxiety, and a growing sense of anticipation. They were about to turn the tables on those who had underestimated them, and nothing would ever be the same again. The hours blended together as they worked through the details of their counterattack. Margaret proved invaluable, her experience guiding them through complex legal maneuvers while maintaining strategic ambiguity. They crafted careful responses to the cease and desist order, neither confirming nor denying their intentions while asserting their rights under the original agreement. Meanwhile, Sophie coordinated with trusted allies still working within the company, gathering intelligence about the new management's plans. The information coming in was alarming: massive budget cuts to research and development, lucrative client contracts being renegotiated without proper consideration, and key personnel being forced out or choosing to leave voluntarily. "It's like they're intentionally sabotaging everything," Sophie reported during one of their late-night strategy sessions. "Some of the decisions they're making could set us back years if we don't intervene soon." Lila rubbed her temples, feeling the beginnings of a headache forming. The pressure was mounting from all sides: legal threats, public scrutiny, and the constant worry about their former employees caught in the crossfire. But through it all, she maintained an outward appearance of calm determination, knowing that any sign of weakness could be exploited by their opponents. Their user community continued to grow stronger in their support, with some of their largest clients threatening to terminate contracts unless significant changes were made. Industry analysts began publishing reports questioning the board's decisions, while influential tech figures publicly expressed concern about the direction the company was heading. "We're creating the perfect storm," Jameson observed, reviewing the latest media coverage. But we need to time our move perfectly. Activate clause 23 too soon, and they'll have time to maneuver against us. Wait too long, and the damage might be irreversible. Margaret nodded in agreement. Which is why we need to keep them distracted while we build our case. The more mistakes they make, the stronger our position becomes. To this end, they orchestrated a carefully planned misinformation campaign, leaking selective details about their activities to keep the board guessing about their true intentions. Rumors circulated about potential partnerships, acquisition offers, and even plans to launch a competing platform. Each story was designed to create doubt and division among the investors, forcing them to second-guess their strategy. Through it all, Lila maintained contact with key members of their original team, many of whom were struggling under the new regime. She listened to their frustrations, offered advice where she could, and helped coordinate discreet resistance efforts within the company. It was risky, but necessary. They needed insiders who could provide real-time intelligence and help protect their remaining assets. One particular conversation stood out, with Rachel, their former head of customer relations. "They're destroying everything we built," Rachel confided during a secure video call. "Customers are confused, employees are demoralized, and the product roadmap makes no sense. I've never seen anything like it." Lila's heart ached hearing the pain in Rachel's voice. "We're working on a solution," she assured her. "But I need you to hang in there a little longer. Can you keep documenting everything? Every bad decision, every complaint from clients, every problem with a new direction." Rachel nodded resolutely. "Consider it done. Just promise me one thing, when you come back, you'll fix this mess." "We will," Lila vowed, meaning every word. "No matter what it takes." As days turned into weeks, their operation grew more sophisticated. They set up encrypted communication channels, developed contingency plans for various scenarios, and even established a legal defense fund with contributions from supportive investors who had grown disillusioned with the current board's actions. The turning point came unexpectedly during a routine review of financial records. Sophie noticed something odd in the quarterly reports, irregularities in the accounting that suggested funds were being redirected to shell companies connected to certain board members. It was subtle, almost invisible to the untrained eye, but damning nonetheless. "This is it," Jameson said, his voice barely above a whisper as they examined the evidence. "This is how we take them down." Lila felt a chill run down her spine. They had been looking for leverage, a way to force the board's hand without directly invoking Clause 23 too soon. This discovery gave them exactly what they needed, proof of misconduct that could threaten not just individual careers, but the entire investment structure supporting the company. Margaret immediately went to work drafting a confidential memorandum detailing their findings, carefully worded to suggest they were considering taking the matter to regulatory authorities. The document was designed to be leaked strategically, creating maximum impact while protecting their sources. "We send this to the right people," Margaret explained, "and watch the dominoes fall. The investors will turn on each other faster than you can imagine." But as they prepared to execute this critical phase of their plan, an unexpected complication arose. One of their most trusted allies within the company was suddenly terminated, their access revoked and communications monitored. It was clear their operations had been partially compromised, though the extent of the breach remained uncertain. "We need to accelerate our timeline," Lila decided, her mind racing through the implications. "If they know we're onto something, they'll try to cover their tracks. We might lose our advantage." The team gathered in Sophie's apartment once more, the atmosphere tense as they debated their next move. Every option carried risks, every choice could potentially expose their entire operation. But as Lila looked around at the determined faces of her companions, she realized they had already crossed the point of no return. "We activate Clause 23 tomorrow," she announced, her voice steady despite the gravity of the decision. "It's time to take back what's ours." The room fell silent as the weight of her words sank in. They had spent weeks preparing for this moment, building their case, gathering support, and positioning themselves for the final confrontation. Now, with the clock ticking down, they would soon discover whether their efforts had been enough to reclaim their company and restore their vision for its future. As dawn broke over the city, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Lila felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. The battle ahead would be fierce, the outcome uncertain, but she knew one thing for sure: they would fight with everything they had, for their company, their team, and the future they had always envisioned. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Sophie's apartment as they finalized their plan. The air buzzed with a mix of tension and resolve, each member of their small team knowing that today would be pivotal. Lila sat at the dining table, her fingers tracing the edges of the termination letter she had refused to open weeks ago. It felt like a relic from another life now, symbolic but powerless against what they were about to unleash. "All right," Margaret said firmly, breaking the silence. "Here's how we'll do this. First, we send out the memorandum detailing the financial irregularities to key stakeholders anonymously. That will destabilize the board and create internal chaos. Then within hours, you activate Clause 23. Lila nodded, her jaw tightening. Clause 23 was their ace, a provision buried deep in the original funding agreement that gave the founding team the right to reclaim operational control if certain conditions were met, including gross mismanagement or ethical violations by the board. They had meticulously documented every mistake, every bad decision, and every breach of trust since the takeover. Combined with the evidence of embezzlement, it was an ironclad case. Jameson leaned forward, his voice steady. "And once Clause 23 is triggered, we go public. We release everything, their incompetence, the financial misconduct, our legal rights, and let the court of public opinion finish the job." Sophie glanced up from her laptop, where she had been coding furiously for hours. "I've set up a secure server to host all the documentation. If things get messy, and they probably will, we can make sure the truth gets out no matter what happens to us." Margaret gave a grim smile. "Good thinking. Always have a backup plan." She turned to Lila. "Are you ready for this? Once we start, there's no turning back." Lila took a deep breath, meeting each of their eyes in turn. "I've never been more ready. Let's do it." By mid-morning, the first phase of their operation was underway. The anonymous memorandum landed in the inboxes of major investors, regulatory bodies, and select journalists. Within minutes, phones began ringing across the city as panic rippled through the boardroom of their former company. Text messages poured in from inside sources confirming the chaos, board members accusing one another, lawyers being summoned, emergency meetings called. Meanwhile, Lila stood in front of a camera in Sophie's living room, recording a video statement. Behind her, a slideshow of documents and charts highlighted the board's mismanagement and illegal activities. Her voice was calm but firm as she spoke directly to their users, employees, and supporters. "Today, I'm here to tell you the truth about what has happened to our company. Weeks ago, my co-founder and I were removed from the business we built from scratch, not because we failed, but because a group of individuals chose greed over integrity. Since then, they have systematically dismantled everything we worked so hard to create. But enough is enough." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in before continuing. "Under the terms of our original agreement, we are exercising our right to reclaim leadership of this company. This isn't just about us, it's about protecting the vision, values, and people who made this platform what it is today. Together, we can restore what was lost and build something even stronger." As soon as the video was uploaded to their newly launched website, social media erupted. Hashtags supporting their cause trended worldwide, and messages of encouragement flooded in from users and industry leaders alike. Meanwhile, Sophie monitored the secure server, ensuring that all incriminating evidence remained accessible despite attempts to shut it down. Hours later, the board convened an emergency meeting to address the crisis. Their arrogance had crumbled under the weight of public scrutiny and mounting pressure from investors. When Jameson formally invoked Clause 23 via certified mail, citing specific breaches outlined in the contract, the remaining board members realized they had no choice but to comply. That evening, Lila received a call from Mr. Thompson himself, the same man who had dismissed her weeks earlier with a condescending smile. His tone was markedly different now, laced with desperation. "Lila," he began, his voice trembling slightly, "perhaps we acted too hastily. There may be room for negotiation." She cut him off coldly. "There's nothing to negotiate. You violated the agreement, betrayed the trust of everyone involved, and nearly destroyed what we spent years building. It's over. Step aside, or face the consequences." The line went silent for a moment before Thompson finally replied, "Very well. We'll honor the contract." When news broke that the founders had successfully regained control of the company, the reaction was overwhelming. Employees cheered openly in the office, many of whom had secretly hoped for this outcome all along. Clients expressed relief, knowing the people who truly understood the product were back in charge. Even some of the ousted board members issued public apologies, though Lila paid them little mind. In the days that followed, Lila and Jameson worked tirelessly to stabilize the company. They reinstated terminated employees, restored shelved projects, and rebuilt relationships with clients. Sophie spearheaded efforts to improve transparency and accountability within the organization, ensuring that such a betrayal could never happen again. At a press conference held in the company's headquarters, a space that now felt like home again, Lila addressed reporters and stakeholders. Standing beside Jameson and Sophie, she spoke not just as a founder, but as someone who had fought for justice and won. "This victory belongs to all of us," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "To the users who believed in us when others doubted, to the employees who stayed loyal despite uncertainty, and to everyone who reminded us why we started this journey in the first place. Today marks a new chapter, not just for our company, but for anyone who dares to dream big and fight for what's right." As applause filled the room, Lila allowed herself a rare moment of vulnerability. Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness, they were tears of triumph. Against all odds, they had taken back what was theirs, proving that resilience, integrity, and unwavering determination could overcome even the most daunting challenges. Months later, the company flourished under its renewed leadership. User engagement soared, partnerships expanded, and innovation thrived once more. But beyond the metrics and milestones, something deeper had changed. The experience had forged unbreakable bonds among the team, instilling in them a profound sense of purpose and unity. One evening, as Lila walked through the office after hours, she stopped to gaze at the neon sign above the entrance, the same one she had stared at on the night she was fired. Only now, it didn't flicker or cast strange shadows. It shone brightly, steady and true, illuminating the path forward. She smiled to herself, feeling a quiet pride in what they had accomplished. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but she knew one thing for certain: together, they could face anything. After all, they had already proven that sometimes, the greatest victories come from standing your ground, and refusing to give up on what matters most.